Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're letting everybody just file on in, so make yourselves comfortable, and we'll get started shortly. Oh, great. Kevin's here. A couple more people. Karen's here. Hi, Robin. Hi, Beth.
Hello.
How's everyone today?
Eh,
Doing good. These weeks are flying by for me. I don't know how they feel for you. Are they dragging for you, or are they going fast at this point? All right. Well, it looks like we've got a good group here started, and Sable is going to be helping me out in the background here, letting anybody else that comes in um, into the meeting as we get started. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. Today, our focus is on thinking beyond just responding to individual employer needs, what we often are referring to as employer driven or employer demand, and moving towards thinking about employer led strategies. So we're making a distinction there. So that means supporting employers to come together, identify shared challenges, and collectively shape program decisions. And so this approach isn't about doing things differently in the short term. It's a strategy that strengthens programs for the long term and helps ensure the sustainability across the system, kind of moving the intermediary role from the ECE wrap implementer to the ECE wrap facilitator with employers at the helm. So as we go through these activities today, keep in mind that we're exploring how employers can lead and how intermediaries can support that leadership and what that might look like in practice. And so we're going to learn from the examples that we have in this room, look at patterns, and think about how we can apply them in different ways that helps make the program stronger and more sustainable. So we'll go ahead and get started. With an agenda review, we're doing our welcome, our agenda review, and then we have learning objectives, of course. We're going to have an engagement warm up where we're doing an employer leadership snapshot. We're going to do a poll with that and have a little chat reflection. And then we're going to move into our employer led network presentation and group dialogue with our guest presenters. One of your own, Kevin Green from Focus Hope, and then one of my friend and colleagues, Michael Evans from the Kalamazoo Literacy Council. We'll move that discussion into some individual reflection and our call to action. We have a little bit of time carved out in our PLC today to go over changes that are taking place to the CDA, right? We're just getting used to it and they're changing it again on us. And so we wanted to carve out some space for that, to talk about that. And then we have next steps and close. So any questions about the agenda? All right. And I think I made you all read the learning objectives next time, so we will share in that responsibility and I will do it today. So today, what we hope to accomplish is analyzing current employer-led practices, so what you're already doing, and then reflecting on how we can personally contribute to these efforts, expanding them, growing them, and recognize opportunities for expanding employer-led leadership. So how can we grow what's already happening and add new things? And then compare examples of employer-led networks from your peers and the guest presenters. Again, identifying patterns and contrasts and transferable strategies that can inform our own practices and our own organizations. And then our call to action today is going to be articulating one actionable step that you can take to enhance employer leadership in your own work. And then just demonstrating a personal commitment to applying the insights that you've heard from today's session. So any questions about what we're trying to accomplish today? Great. Moving along. All right, so now we're going to do a quick warm-up activity to get us thinking about employer leadership in our own work. So this will help us reflect on where employers are currently leading initiatives and where there might be opportunities to expand their role. So this will set the stage for the dialogue that we'll have with our guest presenters today. So now I'm going to get you set up to take a poll, which Sable is going to launch shortly. So, one thing that often shapes employer leadership work is whether employers are engaged individually or collectively. And you're all working on building strong one on one relationships with employers, which is very, very valuable. In some models, intermediaries gather input from employers individually and design programs in response. In other models, intermediaries bring employers together so they can identify shared challenges and collectively decide what the program does and how it evolves. So you can see that we've kind of teased out that distinction here with what you see on the slide. So now we're going to go ahead and launch the poll. So Sable, go ahead and launch that poll and go ahead and respond to the poll. And then we'll follow up with an additional chance for you to respond in the chat as well. So let's see. We'll give you all a little bit of time to respond. Michael, feel free to respond as well. Getting some engagement here. Looking pretty evenly distributed. Let's see how this rolls out. They keep changing on me every time I want to make a comment. Give it another minute or so. We might have gotten everybody's response. What do you think, Sable? Yeah? Okay, go ahead. And now if you end the poll, is it going to show the perfect? Okay. So yeah, that's kind of all over the spectrum here with a lot of employers giving input, but mostly one-on-one. And we do have some examples of employers collectively deciding how the program evolves. And in some cases, the intermediary is leading the way. So lots to talk about, lots of perspectives to think about. So thank you, Sable, so much for that. So we can end that now. Let me see. Okay, great. Hold on one sec here. Tech. All right. So now in the chat, and we use all the information that you share with us in the chat. So we love all the information you give. So please, in 1 to 2 sentences, share an example of how employers currently shape decisions in your work, or one way you wish they were more involved. It can go either way. So I'd love to hear what you have to say in the chat. And we'll read a couple responses before we move on. Looks like you all are working hard at sharing with us. I'm so excited to read what you're going to share. All right, we've got a response in the chat. Let me get to that. We got them coming in. All right, let's see. Robin, employers choose to add occupations in order that their employees or potential apprentices wanted and needed them. So the program evolved as the employers communicated they needed it to. Oh, and I've got lots of stuff coming in here, so it's hard for me to keep up. Let's see. Michael says employers decide on the amount and level of talent They want us to recruit and training collaboratively. They set the targets and monitor the outcomes. And Evlon shared, employers generally know what it is they want to accomplish. However, they value our expertise and guidance. Sounds like some partnership there. So lots of good stuff happening, and I'm so thankful you all shared that in the chat because we will be able to pull that out and use it to inform our discussions moving forward. Thank you so much. I'll share one last one. Liz here shared. Oh, we work with the individual employer partners to customize the program as much as allowable to their unique needs. All right. Thank you everyone for sharing. All right, I'm going to go on to the next slide, making sure we're staying on time here. All right, so before we pass the mic over to our guests, we want to elevate that the Early Childhood Investment Corporation recognizes the power of networks and systems change and is actively engaged in supporting network development. And so we just wanted to highlight that and highlight which networks ECIC is actively working on developing right now. So many of you are familiar with the Regional Child Care Coalition and are working with them to expand and develop childcare in the region. We have family childcare networks. So family childcare networks are an opportunity to bring home-based childcare business owners and entrepreneurs together to support them in a variety of ways. One, around business operations, two, professional development, career growth, and just helping them operate in the most seamless way so that they can focus their attention and care on children and families. Also making sure they're supported with that. And then just the peer aspect of it has been really helpful for home-based childcare providers and networks. And then we have the Michigan Infant Toddler Network. And so this is working on bringing together practitioners of infant and toddler care. And so we just wanted to highlight that there's a lot of network happening at ECIC. And so those are some examples of that. And so as we dive into dialogue around employer-led networks, we want to share with you that there are 3 tenets of network development that ECIC aims to ensure are present. So when they're looking at network development, they're focusing on making sure that it is cross-sector. And so there are different people represented in this network from different sectors, that it is participant-led. And so if we're talking about, in our context, we're talking about employer-led, and that it is established to affect systems change. And so just highlighting out that this is the work that ECIC is doing around network development and what their focus is on. All right. So with that, I want to just do my brief introduction to our 2 guests here today. You've all had experiences with both of them. I'm sure of it. I know Michael's done work with us on a registered apprenticeship work before here at ECIC. And of course, Kevin's been a part of our cohort this entire time. But they're both here today to present collectively around their work with talent pipeline management framework and the way that framework leverages employer-led networks for implementation. And so before I pass the mic over to the 2 of them to share just some highlights of what they're doing before we get into a discussion about it, I just want to share this picture of them. Together. I think this is the place maybe where they met for the first time. I'm not sure, they can confirm on it, but I found it on the internet and I said I have to share this with the group together. We have our presenters photographed together at TPM. So, all right, with that, I will pass it back to Kevin and Michael to introduce yourselves and then just do an introduction to your work. Thank you.
Yeah, you going first?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a smart thing for me to do, but hey, let's give it a try. No, you go ahead, Michael.
Oh, well, let me introduce myself and a little bit about how we've applied TPM as an employer-led strategy for talent development. As you can see on the screen, my name is Michael Evans. I'm the Executive Director and Chief Literacy Advocate for the Kalamazoo Literacy Council, located in Southwestern Michigan, Kalamazoo. And our primary purpose as an intermediary is to support adult learners who want to improve their literacy and language skills. With talent pipeline management, I am a person who went through the TPM Academy, which is an academy designed to help align employer-led collaboratives around their six strategies structured to really help employers to be able to collectively solve their talent needs. So I went through the TPM Academy along with Kevin and several others, and became a fellow and a mentor helping to support other TPM employer-led collaboratives across the state and throughout the nation. And also went through a peer review process to become a verified talent supply chain manager, which is why you see that little credential thing underneath my smiling face that is outside of our organization. So where TPM for us in terms of its application for employer-led collaboratives really is providing a framework for listening to the talent needs that employers have and collectively finding a solution for how we can address those talent needs. And in our case, it was around the sector of early childhood education when our local employers were trying to address the talent gap and the talent crisis, really, when it comes to supporting early learning professionals and connecting them to that very important agreed upon credential, the Child Development Associate certificate, and the registered apprenticeship itself. So our process really had been is applying the talent pipeline management framework to help align those employers' expectations so that they have a structured approach for being able to recruit the talent that they needed into their different programs and the different agencies that they have. So as the intermediary, our job was to basically facilitate the process, but with employer-led collaborations, they were making all of the choices. The first was to collectively work together. The second, to align around the TPM strategy and framework. And the third is to commit the time necessary to be able to monitor collectively the results. So I'm not going to make the assumption that you know much about the TPM framework. So I will briefly just walk you through what it actually is. It is a six strategy process that helps employers to be able to align their efforts toward talent development. In the beginning parts is the strategy one, where you're organizing the employer-led collaborative. The role of the intermediary, if they are accepted and endorsed by the employers, is to help with organizing that collaboration. What that means is you're setting up the meetings, you're setting up the framework, and dealing with the logistics of pulling them all together to create a space where they can come to collective agreement. Separately, they have already maybe talked to you as an intermediary, but your role in that central role is to work with them collectively to come to agreement on some key decisions. The second strategy is that first decision. What do they need to have in terms of talent? So they engage in something that's called demand planning, where they decide what it is that we're trying to recruit in terms of the type of role, the employment role, when they collectively look to what their collective talent need would be. So in the case of where we are currently with our 11 employer-led collaboratives, there are 11 employers that project how much talent they need in entry-level positions around early learning professionals and leave it to the intermediaries to work together to create the recruitment plan for how that would actually be managed. The next key decision they have after they've agreed upon what talent that they would like to recruit and the volume of that talent is they talk about the competencies that are required to support that talent. And with multiple employers, they may have different credentials and different types of competencies that are required. They work collectively to say what is our common minimum expectation, and that is how we could collectively recruit specifically for that talent. In early childhood education, is relatively easy because there is a registered apprenticeship that is broadly and nationally recognized, and there's the CDA credential itself. And they've all agreed to that. And once you have an agreed upon credential, it helps to be able to, for those intermediaries, to recruit the proper talent that is meeting their minimum level of competencies and expectations. So that's the next decision that they make. The third is when they start looking at their own data to really look at how they've been able to recruit talent before so that we can project where we might be able to find future talent in other places. This is called analyzing talent flows. And that's basically if you've hired someone, where did they come from? And where can we create new talent sources based off of your individual data that you've submitted? I should say going backward that almost all of this is driven by data that they have selected. So it's not us guessing at it. They have committed to providing information about their employment openings, the type of distance it takes in terms of time to fill positions, and many of the other pain points that they've identified. And as the intermediary, it's our job to organize a way for them to be able to talk intelligently about what they want. But after we've analyzed the talent flows, we start to rebuild and strengthen the actual talent supply chains. So we might have found that without having data, we might guess, well, you might be able to get people in early learning professional degree positions from Western Michigan University. From the outside, that might make sense as a four-year university, but learning from our directly from our employer led collaborative through their own data, we find that most of the time that that is not the case. It is coming from other programs that are working with potential entry level positions, usually not even in the sector of childcare. So it can be from retail, it can be from working in factory work, and they're not necessarily fulfilled. Well, because we had their specific data, we can show that that is where your talent is coming from, but also find similar places where that talent could come from that will meet their needs. In our case, it ended up being a happy coincidence that they had not been seeing the local adult education providers such as ours as a talent source, and they didn't really have necessarily a neighborhood-based strategy to be able to recruit that talent. So after we have built those talent supply chains, we spend our time analyzing and developing continuous improvement so we can increase the flow of talent, increase the quality of talent, and have fewer of those gaps where we are missing out and the completion of individuals for providing their completion of the CDA and the apprenticeship. The unique role that we have as an intermediary is we provide a lot of wraparound support. So once someone is recruited, whether we found them at a retail operation or a homeless shelter or any of our community-based partners, we remove barriers to participating in training and remove barriers continually, even after they've been employed in completing the apprenticeship, with the goal of making sure that they can be retained by the employers for at least 1 year after completion. But we're pushing to try to get beyond 2 years. So that's generally how we apply the TPM framework. We listen to the talent needs of our employers and we walk them through the key decisions as the intermediary to help them to be able to agree upon what they're going to work on collectively. And we monitor the results in terms of placements and CDA completions and registered apprenticeship completions so they can see the impact that they are having collectively together as an employer-led collaborative focusing on childcare. So that's our brief overview. Kevin, you probably have equally impressive, but definitely wonderful work at Focus Hope. So it's
I
all to
do
you now.
not, and I didn't. I knew that it would be a challenge following you. I didn't think that there was an easy decision. Do I let him go first or do I let him go last? It wasn't going to be easy either way. But hey, my friend, I'm happy to be here. I'll try my best not to be redundant in the information. And so, what I'll do is talk about how we use TPM at Focus Hope, how TPM came to Focus Hope, and then maybe share some best practices with you. And so, hey, I would love to say that we're a noble organization and we found TPM, but actually as a part of a funding opportunity. Hey, we applied for the grant, we looked at the grant, and now we have to do this TPM thing. Didn't even know what it was, but hey, they gave us some grant dollars to be able to do it. Historically, we looked at the consumer's energy model, which was one of the first talent pipeline management consortiums in Michigan. We looked at that model and we looked at ways that TPM could come to us. But we quickly found out with our research, it was going to be much easier for us to join and go to TPM. We joined the National Learning Network and went to the National Academy, cohort number 19, woo-hoo, right? And we learned a lot about TPM from our partners in DC. What I would really like to say is if workforce is a dance, and many of us have been doing workforce for generations. But how do you really explain that to someone? So what I really think is if workforce is a dance, then TPM is the music and the steps. It really talks about talent pipeline management or workforce in a way that everyone can understand it. And so some of our best practices, generally, a person like us, a workforce person would kind of go to the academy, get this TPM knowledge, and then bring that back to kind of share that with our partners. We had some very robust partners getting started, namely the Great Lakes Water Authority. And we were in doing this water treatment slash advanced manufacturing thing with TPM. Um, we thought and now know that it is a best practice for us to send our employer partners, especially our anchor employers, to the academy themselves. In this way, we wouldn't have to, I wouldn't have to learn everything myself. These were some very smart, capable people, and they could really help me launch our first consortium. And that is exactly what happened. We took a cross section of our employer partners and our education partners, and we all went through the academy together. And that one allowed us to bond with one another in ways that was outside of the traditional workplace. And I think it was a success. Since then, we have some other options because the our partners at MLEO had commissioned a state academy that made it easier for people to participate. And we had these convenings in Mount Pleasant where again got a chance to work with Michael. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is apprenticeships and TPM. So during this state academy, our partners at the National Academy and in the state says, hey, we want to figure out how apprenticeships and TPM can marry one another. And at Focus Hope, we've been doing apprenticeships, we've been doing TPM, and so we were a part of their convening that gave some feedback on apprenticeships and talent pipeline management. I think that these things work very well together and handshake very well together. And then finally, a few accolades. Having been doing TPM for now 6 years, the state of Michigan and our partners at the National have convened a case study on Focus Hope and the Great Lakes Water Authority and how we were able to partner so successfully together. And in this last convening in DC back in October, Focus Hope and the Great Lakes Water Authority, our partnership was inducted into the TPM Hall of Fame. A couple of years ago, I didn't know there was such a thing. But yeah, that's a really big deal for us, both the case study and the Hall of Fame mention. So most of us, and I've worked with all of you in some capacity or another. Hey, we know workforce. I know Kelly's been doing workforce for a long time, right? TPM gives us somewhat of a common language to speak and a common set of strategies. Michael so eloquently went through all of the strategies, but I'm going to not really talk about them, but name them again. So strategy one is organize. So when you have a talent, when you have a consortium of employers, you want to organize, I like to name the baby, so to speak. So give us a name, establish a meeting cadence and everything like that. This is all within the input of employers. There's projected critical job demand, and Michael talked about how that was data driven. Align and communicate job requirements, strategy three. Analyze talent supply, strategy four. Build talent supply chains. strategy 5, and then strategy 6 is continuous improvement. And so what we find is that if you follow this particular framework, right, overlay it on what you're doing, whether it's workforce apprenticeships, some other type of workforce based training, it will get better. So we were already doing registered apprenticeships, right? This wasn't our first grant and not our first rodeo. Let me give you some feedback, right? Using prior to TPM, we did a good job. We met our deliverables. We told them 100 participants. We had 104. We were good to go, right? And fist pumping, we made it. Now applying the TPM strategies with the same number of partners and the same parameters. We told them 100 participants and we delivered 314. It really made our entire process better, and also it helped our employer partners work together. Then came an opportunity to work in early childcare. We were already ready, so to speak, with apprenticeships and TPM, and adding early childcare to that was something that we were really proud to do. We are still in with that consortium. We are still in the organize phase, right? Sometimes it's necessary to organize and then turn that over to employers and tell them, hey, we want you to lead this thing. And we think we have some anchor employers that are going to be able to do that. And finally, partnerships. At Focus Hope, we think that everybody's our partner. We just got to figure a way to make it work. And it has allowed us to develop and strengthen the partnerships that we have. One of the terminologies used in TPM, and they keep talking about it over and over. Michael said this: framework, framework. And so the TPM, while it gives you a roadmap, it is a framework. And so the idea is not to be so closely aligned with the TPM strategies that you forget to service your partners. So I'm long-winded. I'll stop right there and let somebody else talk.
No, you guys are both great. Thank you so much for that overview of your work. And you're not done yet. I just kind of want to put a pin in the conversation real quick and give you a look at what's next. So we're going to transition into a group discussion based on the things that you heard, based on what we saw on the poll and your own experiences. And then after that group discussion, Michael and Kevin are going to kind of come back on and address some of your pain points or address some of the ways you've shared what you're already doing and how that can be folded into TPM work. So there's that. So before we move on into that whole group discussion, though, I would just want to share, like, well, why is it that we're having this conversation? Well, as we are sunsetting this funding opportunity and getting ready to transition into what this looks like for you and your organization post that funding opportunity, a lot of what I hear you talking about is how do we continue to sustain this? What does this version of sustainability look like? And a lot of this is like some of this work is going to have to go back to the employers. But this kind of fear that do the employers have the capacity to take on that work? And so two things. One, we believe, as you can see with what ECIC is already doing around networks, is that networks are powerful, especially in the early childhood field, bringing peers together and colleagues together and developing this like collective advocacy voice is powerful in our space. And so we already are kind of like loving the way networks are working. And then employer led and the TPM piece of this is favorable because it's already working within the workforce development spaces. I mean, TPM is something that Leo knows all about. Like maybe they don't know about early childhood, but they know TPM. And it's like, oh, TPM and early childhood together. Wow, that's cool. You know, Kevin mentioned press and highlights and things like that. And I have to say, like, that has been the experience with the Literacy Council too, is that there's been a lot of press and whatnot around that. And it's just another way to point and shine on what you're doing and get money going that way. And so we want to elevate this idea of networks, employer leadership. We've been talking about leadership development around the apprentices, but also leadership development with the employers is important too. So this is why we're having that conversation. All right, so we're going to let me get my slides pulled back up and we will get back into our PLC. Um, All right. So we're going to move into some live notes, kind of how we've done in the past for large group discussions. It's very similar. I don't necessarily have any like emojis or really cool pictures for you, but the basis is there. And we're experts at this now. So now we're going to identify patterns in employer leadership across your experiences. So these patterns will guide our presenters as they share strategies and tools for expanding employer ownership over programming. And so to make this easier, we're going to use three simple lenses to guide your thinking. And so I'm going to share those now. And in a moment, when we move to the next slide to get ready to do live slides, Sable is going to paste these into the chat too, so you have access to and see them. So we're going to think about employer leadership or employer-led networks in three different ways. One, we want to think about where employers make decisions or guide programs now. And you have some prompts here for you to help think through that, a question, a reflective question, and an example. We're going to think about where employers participate with guidance. And then we're going to think about common challenges or tensions. And I know there's a lot of them. So I know we'll at least have some good information in that area. All right. So why don't we go ahead and take a few minutes to individually reflect on your experiences, think back to the poll and everything that you just heard from Michael and Kevin, and use these three lenses. I'd love for you to identify one example for each, and then I will have you sharing them with me, and we'll enter them into live notes as well. So if we can put them in the chat, that'll be great, because if I miss any, then we can go back and fill them in after we're done. So I'll go ahead and set the timer for 1 or 2 minutes. This is what we're reflecting on, and I'd love an example in category 1, 2, and 3 from each of you. Okay, we're going to give it another 30 seconds or so. And while we're doing that, I'm going to get transitioned into live notes. These examples are in the chat, I believe, Sable, right? If they need them. Yeah. right. Alarm went off. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. We will get ready to take some notes. Sable, can you help me in the chat by chance?
Yeah.
Thanks, dear. My cursor's acting a little funky, but let's see what happens. I know we've got at least one thing shared. What do we have in the chat?
I am not seeing anything yet.
Okay, perfect. Then we will wait. That must be your examples then. Okay. And you're also welcome to come off of mute. We want to hear examples of where employers are currently leading, where they participate with guidance, and what are some common challenges or tensions that you run into.
So we do have something from Robin.
Yeah, you see that. Okay, employers do a good job of identifying measurables. They know what they should include. Are you talking about like in the program? Oh, that's Evelyn's. Yep,
Yep.
this is why I need help, Sable. Sorry, I can't do both. Sorry.
Yep. So Robin says number one, employers gather to set the OJT and RTI curriculum for each occupation, and GLBMW puts it together in Appendix A form to submit to USDOL for approval. The employees, the employers also work together to determine the priority of occupations built.
GLB gathers documents and submits. And then what was the last thing you said?
Submits to USDOL for approval.
Yep.
And then the employers also work together to determine the priority of occupations built.
Um, work together to determine the priority.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. All right. What else do we have?
Evelyn, we have number one, employers do a good job of identifying measurables. They know what should be included.
Okay.
Number two, listing job tasks slash responsibilities, day-to-day operations.
Say that one more time.
Yep. Listing job tasks slash responsibilities and day-to-day operations.
Okay.
And number three, time is huge in staffing. Time is huge staffing.
Staffing capacity or just staffing is like, tell me more about staffing.
Okay, so what I mean there, Nicole, is one is again, many of our employers are very small.
Mm-hmm.
So time is a precious commodity for them, which is why they choose to go with an intermediary so we can pick up those additional tasks. As far as staffing, again, we just talked about talent and developing that and identifying that. So staffing is really a challenge, and I know we talk about these in our individual meetings for our employers. So just keeping the staff and those that are there, training them properly and all of that.
Sure. Yeah, the whole process. That's a pain point, right? Um,
Exactly.
it takes up a lot of their time. If they looked at their budget and the amount of money that they spend on the turnover. So yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for that.
We also have something from Beth. Number one, employers customize how their apprentices get their CDA training.
Yes. Okay.
And then from Liz, number one,
Mhm.
employers identify their preferred RTI provider.
Perfect. Anything else?
Yep. We have Karen, number one, anything customizable. So that's OJT, RTI, wages, and selection procedure.
Okay.
Number 2 for Karen, allowing credit for previous experiences.
I love that that's on that. It's so important. All right.
And then number 3, compliance/regulatory awareness.
You mean with like workforce development, compliance, and regulatory awareness?
With the requirements from the Department of Labor regarding OJT and that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, we have a 337 page licensing childcare manual. We don't want more compliance.
Yes, exactly. We have, I think, what is the requirements document is 30 pages or something like that. So that's where our intermediary really shines, is holding employers' hands through that because they don't want to remember it.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Anything else, Staple?
Yes. So we have number 2 for Robin and Beth. Robin said partners participate with guidance from GLBMW, apprentice and mentor orientations, and quarterly check-ins with apprentices and mentors.
Okay, and that's under 2 as well.
Yes.
Check-ins with mentors and apprentices. Regular. I'll update these notes. Consistency. Okay.
And then again for number 2, Beth said employers provide parameters on the availability of their employees to complete RTI and to meet to discuss their progress.
Is this collectively or is this individually? Beth, was that you?
That's individually. But then we have to say, okay, well, this is what we can do with that in order to make it work for the most people.
Yep. Yeah, so you gather the information individually, but then you decide kind of based on the collective needs. Okay, what else, Sable? Thanks for helping.
Yeah, of course. And it looks like we have 2 more. So Kelly says for number 1,
Okay.
employers come together to review the OJT competencies for a new apprenticeship program, ensuring the job tasks/functions align with their job description, and collaborate on cohort start time and modes of instructions that best fit their staff.
Okay.
And then number 2 for Kelly, informing their staff about the apprenticeship opportunity, explaining the details, expectations, as it differs from typical employment opportunities.
Right. How is this different? How does this look different than typical professional development? What's your commitment level? Informing their staff about RAP, opportunities, expectations, and commitments.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then number 3 for Liz, a challenge is the overall learning curve. Since RAP is still a new idea in the childcare space, many of our contacts are completely new to the model, and we are finding that the program customization needed does not become known until after the apprentices are well into the program.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then it looks like Kelly's number 3 is the same for her, the same as Liz.
Okay. We love a +1. All right. Great. Is that it, Sable?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all. You did such a great job of sharing information. I really appreciate it. That might be the most full our little table has ever been in the history of doing this. So thank you so much. This gives Kevin and Michael something to really look at and think about. We are going to move on to the next segment, where I pass it back to Michael and Kevin to kind of respond to what you've had to say. How we, how what they're already doing can tie into TPM and how some of their pain points could be addressed using the framework from your point of view. So, would you like me to leave this up for you to look at? Is that best, or take it down for conversation? Michael and Kevin?
No, first I was just trying to make it large enough for me to be able
There
to
we go.
see everything.
Is
I
that
didn't copy
better?
it. I've copied it and put it onto another page. Um, so a lot of, at least from what I'm seeing, is that these are very common. And what I want to try to make sure that I'm focusing on is giving you not the general approach, but a traditional TPM view of how to address some of these pieces that we have. And I usually look at the pain points first because TPM is really good at helping the employers to be able to see common pain points, to be able to focus on common solutions when it comes to that. There was one, and I'm not sure exactly when it was stated, but it was about the limitation of time that it comes to be able to come to alignment. One of the things that's very important in the beginning is to really be able to work around the availability of your employers and make sure that the time that is spent is valuable and preferably brief. So we're working on a monthly schedule. It doesn't have to be as frequent, but it does need to be something that isn't long and that they have the ability to be able to know that they'll be able to get value out of every step. And I know it sounds like it's a small thing, but just being able to have all the employers in the room so that it's truly employer led is a key issue for them to be able to fully participate. We typically are looking at where do you already meet. For some of the smaller ones, they haven't been meeting in any other places as part of any other consortiums. So being able to find a way to be able to gather them into that space is really important to be able to remove that time. Our meetings are no longer than an hour. They start on time, they end on time. If we take them into overtime, that's bad on us. So that helps them just from a general standpoint because time is huge. And I say that time is the enemy of them all. But demonstrate the return on investment early in the conversation. We're asking for this time because you said you're missing out on talent that you need, and we can't do this without having your participation. So we look to make sure that at every step they see a return on investment. So the time that we're asking for actually is well used, and they walk away feeling that it was beneficial as opposed to a compliance issue. In other words, they're showing up because they see value as opposed to they're showing up because they agreed to. The second thing is looking at the turnover. That for me, the pain point is the opportunity that brings them in together. Is the values prospect is if we do this together, maybe we'll be able to reduce the turnover. So I'm willing to spend my time to look at that. The question then comes down to are they willing to change some of their practices based off of what they learned together to be able to increase that turnover or decrease that turnover rate to be able to look at how this works. We know that there's a huge cost in terms of that turnover. So the idea of having intermediaries that can have wraparound services that are specifically tailored to those employer needs helps to increase that retention rate. So, for example, with our employer partners, some of the things that they were looking at is, well, time for training for the candidates that were going through the process. Can we arrange for around their work schedules when we provide wraparound support? Can they do it on time, on site? And we were able to adjust when those wraparound services were provided, whether it's transportation, whether it's tutoring, whatever it was, so that it was convenient around what the employers were allowing for their employees to participate in. For those that had that support, their retention rates were quite a bit higher because at every point where there was a hiccup in the process, there was a support that was available. We have a very strong neighborhood-based peer mentor element that's unique to our career pathway. So they can speak to someone who is not their employer about how hard it is, even if it is with the employer. And we trust that because we have that third party support that we can keep it confidential. But the early learning professionals who are making their way through the CDA and through the registered apprenticeship, they know they have a voice that they can trust that is not going to put them in job jeopardy. But the employers also know that they have a voice that they can trust to reduce any disparaging the comments that may come as indictments against the employers. And we do share if there's anything particular that's helping or reducing the ability for early learning professionals to complete or remain employed. We're very data driven in it. So in the sense that each of our meetings that we are able to provide relevant data that they can respond to, whether it's in job placements, retention rates, or the services that are provided, so that they see a lot of value in addressing that common tension. The other thing that we find is because they are all working in the same field, they tend to be able to share practices with each other. So we don't have to become the experts in all the regulatory requirements. And just by having that collective voice, that seems to reduce the learning curve because they're learning it together. And if they have a common question, we can ask for a common answer that we can investigate separately from them. And that learning curve, the it is true, it is real. But together, if they have steps and supports along each step of the process for establishing a registered apprenticeship and maintaining it, it's something that because they're bearing the brunt of that collectively, it's a little bit easier to carry. And TPM is all about sharing the resources that the employers have. Now, one other thing I would say is if you have different sizes of employers, working out the culture of the group, you may see that there's some benefit to that. The benefit being that sometimes the larger employer may have greater capacity. And if they have shared their common interest together, they can borrow that capacity when it comes to understanding some of the regulatory concerns and also having the ability to be able to have a larger representative voice in a broader range of services. And for the smaller ones, what that also provides is it gives the collaborative to a more unique perspective of how to tailor services that can fit those smaller employers without necessarily trying to have a one size fit all model. So the home-based provider is going to have different wraparound needs than the larger employer, but there tends to be common shared knowledge based off of them collectively sharing their experiences and coming to solutions by sharing what it looks like for them to be able to have in common. So I started with the tensions because in TPM, that's the first thing you're looking for is what are our common pain points. We talked a little bit about the time and talked a little bit about the bringing together the right wraparound services to reduce turnover and sharing expertise for collectively understanding compliance and regulatory issues and working together to be able to climb that learning curve home for properly addressing registered apprenticeship construction and implementation. So hopefully that was helpful. Kevin, you're up.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. This is working because you really did a great job of laying that out. I'll continue with the tensions because I think that's what TPM is designed to do. It really is to design to get employers to work together to solve common challenges. That said, you may end up with a situation in which you have competitors who have those common challenges. But hey, you put them in a room, you say, go solve your common challenges, and nobody says anything because they don't really trust the folks that are in the room with them. Automotive, you got Ford, GM, and Chrysler in the room, and tell me what your challenges are. And how many electricians do you need? And this sort of thing. They don't say anything because those are my competitors. It's very important that during the organization phase while you're recruiting these employers and getting them to work with you in TPM is that they understand that their organization, their company are going to be protected, and the TPM process is built to protect them. So as a convener, the thing that you need to talk about, and Michael talked about the data, is the data that we collect when it's shared, it will be aggregated. And so, nobody's gonna know, how much they pay. Now, if you got two employers and you say how many people, I mean, they're gonna be able to easily do the math. But when, we have 10 employers in a collaborative and we talk about how much they pay, what are the common pain points, knowing that that data is aggregated really will help um, those employers begin to build some trust. There is something in TPM called a host organization, and it's really important that the employers trust the host. So they're going to give their information to the host. They got to know that you're going to be responsible, and when that data is shared, it's going to be aggregated. The other things that I'll say, some of the challenges here, just speak to registered apprenticeship plainly. And I think that it's important to not only meet with the apprentices and the intermediaries on a regular basis, but I think that it's very important that somebody in an organization plays the role of apprenticeship coordinator. At Focus Hope, I think right now I'm playing that role and I'm meeting with our employers and apprentices individually, no less than once monthly. So that has been a heavy lift, but it has also bear fruit because I've gotten to know all of the apprentices on a personal basis and built some trust with the employees.
Yes, thank you both so much for that. I really appreciate you both taking the time to kind of highlight what your work's been and using TPM. And again, just highlighting in early childhood, like we've seen the power of networks. And so networks are a strategy you can use in this field. In moving projects and work forward and getting communication going. And then in the workforce side of things, this TPM framework really aligns with what's going on in other industries. And, one of the things I know Michael and Kevin are working on is getting early childhood education recognized as an industry, the same as healthcare, manufacturing, etc. And so I think one of the things they've done by aligning early childhood with this framework that's operating in these other industries is really demonstrating how that can be done. So we wanted to share that for you, with you, but ultimately just really going back to this idea of like, you're getting ready to transition, you're wanting employers to take on some responsibility, you're needing your role to look a little bit differently. Maybe this is a path you want to pursue because through this employer-led network process, that happens. And your role does change. So thank you both so much for everything you shared. And you're free to, Michael, stay on or go. Kevin, you have to stay. But next, we're going to transition into this information about the CDA. So thank you both again. All right. Oh, sorry. Nope. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. I've got a slide before that. I got a little ahead of myself. All right. So this is where we're going to do our individual reflection, and I've paired our call to action with this. So as we move into closing out this portion of the PLC, we'd like you to think about a couple things. One, we want you to think about a belief that you hold about employer-led networks or employer leadership and participation. And the question we want you to reflect on is, has anything you heard today challenged or confirmed that belief? Take a little bit of time to think about that. We're also going to have you, after spending time reflecting on employer-led networks and what Michael and Kevin have had to share in your own experiences, we want you to think about, are there any small behaviors you could shift to enable more employer leadership? So we're going to take a little bit of time to think about that. And then we're going to, your call to action, you can put this information in the chat or come off of mute and share out loud, but your call to action is going to be you sharing one commitment you're willing to try from your reflections. So go ahead and take a little bit of time to think about that. Sable's going to put some examples in the chat for you, just if they're helpful. And then we will move to the next part of our PLC once we're done with this. So take a few minutes and I'll know you're ready to move on when I see your responses in the chat. Another minute or so. Another 30 seconds or so. So if you have something you're ready to share, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat or come off mute and share. So Beth is, I'm thinking, so Beth is saying, I'm thinking we can better prepare employers for post ECIC award by starting to regularly meet as a group. Yeah, I agree. And that's part of the hurdle is figuring out how to do that. So I think that is a great first step. And I'm sure Michael has some insight for you, Beth, if you want to reach out about how we go about doing that over in Kalamazoo. And Evelyn's posted something here. Belief. I think employers must have a clear understanding of how apprenticeships work and the value they add to their company. Absolutely, for buy-in. And the reflection is, I think it is important to ensure employers know about the resource available to them to help them be successful with this initiative. Yep. So it sounds like, how am I continuously developing that narrative so that it resonates with them? So it's something that speaks to them and they can understand. Kelly, what Kevin shared about having competitors sharing information in a room together through their hiring needs, it can be a challenge. But once you work through it and see that everyone has similar pain points and working towards the same goal, they're willing to share. And it is really amazing to see and be a part of. I agree with that. And I also saw some really cool things happening when, like, one employer was laying off some of its staff, or like maybe it wasn't a good fit between the employee and the employer. And so they parted ways with the apprentice, but then we were able to find a job for the apprentice in another collaborative employer. And that obviously was going to feel good for the apprentice, but it also felt good for the employer who like separated themselves from the apprentice as well. They were happy that they were able to be supported by like a partner site. So just another interesting way of growing that work together and those feelings
I
together.
have a little side note of like a really cool success story that we were just recently a part of. We like do like an emergency response when we hear about businesses that are going out of business or doing mass layoffs, and have a whole, group that goes in to kind of provide like our services and show, and they held a job fair for that. And this HR from another company, like this is not related to childcare, but another manufacturer, she went in and attended the job fair, ended up sticking around and chatting with some of the people, and went back to her boss. And he's like, yeah, did you find anyone good to potentially hire? And she's like, I'll take all of them. And they
Yeah.
literally ended up being, it was that they were able to buy this company that was about to go under. And now they're like merged together as one larger company manufacturing similar products. And it was just literally like those people would have probably all been displaced and not have a job. But like this HR, she's like, I just love all of those people. I want them all to be my coworkers. So she scooped them all up, and they're like running under one name now, which is so crazy, but
That's
like
great.
an interesting way to look at it, I guess.
Yeah,
We
it
were
is.
competitors prior to that, but like attended a job fair to look for some skilled workers, and like they were all a good fit. So really cool.
Yeah, exactly. I think just like being open to, like this person's hiring and this
Yeah.
person, so like let's put it together. I think that the job of that, like Kevin said, the job of that project coordinator and kind of knowing what's the stories of what's happening to the employers within the network so that those kind of pairings can be made together is really important. All right, thank you all for that. All right. Well, thank you all so very much. Thank you for sharing in the chat and coming off of mute. We're going to go ahead and move past this part of our PLC and move into the CDA update. Thank you all again. All right. Okay, so the Child Development Associate, it's linked intimately to some registered apprenticeship programs and others it kind of operates separately. Some have requirements, some don't, but the CDA, as it's referred to, is a foundational credential in our field. And so, whether your program is linked to it or not, directly, it certainly is indirectly, and changes to the credentialing process affects the people that you're working with. And so, we do have some resources for you. We have a webinar that's being put on about the changes that we'll share with you. And then there's also that document that I forwarded and put in the email to you all as well. We'll make sure that that's in the drive for you to take a peek at. And any other update resources we'll be sure to share with you. All of that being said, we wanted to pull out the changes from the document and kind of highlight how we think this could impact an ECE wrap and talk about that. Okay. Um, all right. So just to go over these changes, and again, these are new and they're rolling out. So as we understand them, there's a couple things that are happening. So part of earning a CDA is taking a test, right? You go through your classes, you have to take this test. And so they've changed the way the test score works. So the test score can expedite the certification or it can trigger a validation visit. So one of the steps to the CDA in the past was you had to have somebody come out and do a validation visit. Well, that doesn't necessarily have to happen if you score a certain amount. Also, if you score too low on the test, they won't even review your portfolio. So you have to score at least a certain amount for the portfolio to be reviewed. So that means that if they're not scoring a certain amount on these tests, the CDA process can be prolonged. It also means if they're scoring above a certain amount that the CDA process can be expedited. What we don't have is what those score ranges are. But we wanted to share with you. We think it'll impact how you think about RTI or talk about or measure RTI. How is RTI working, and are people passing this test or not? So with that, we want to say that the test, there's new regulations around the test. So the test can be retaken twice. Before then, the applicant would have to wait 6 months before taking it again. So if they weren't passing the test twice, then that would prolong it even further. So again, placing importance on the importance of the RTI and the preparation for the CDA test. Another big piece of this that we feel might affect you is that portfolios are all now going to be digital. So I don't know if my friend Michael's still on the call or not, but immediately I think of him and thinking about digital literacy skill development. That's one of the wraparound services that they offer. And I can tell you, I'm coaching infant toddler teachers right now who are working on their CDA. And when I said that the portfolio was all digital, their jaws dropped. And so just this anxiety around like, well, what does that mean? And what does that look like now as a change? That is a challenge. And then there's changes to timelines. And so those are the changes that were highlighted. Someone in the field has said, they're little kind of changes, but they can have a significant impact. So we think that it could impact your data collection. So high quality RTI can move apprentices through the CDA faster or slower than before. RTI, you might want to consider digital literacy skill development because they will be needed in order to complete the portfolio. And then this is something that was highlighted in the documents from the council who certifies the certificate, is that they've identified that that there will be transition challenges and apprehension with your employers and your apprentices. And so your apprenticeship partnerships are going to matter even more because they're going to feel a little bit confused through this process. So all of that being said, we just want to share again that these documents, there are documents that provide an overview and highlight the changes. They'll be in the Google Drive. And that Teach is going to be doing a presentation on this in April 20th at 1 p.m. During their Nap Time Nuggets webinar. So I have not been able to find registration information on that yet. However, I did have the webinar calendar invite forwarded to me. And so what I'm going to give you guys a heads up on right now is that I think the best way for me to do that is just forward that invite to you all. So just so you know, heads up that that'll be coming. And then that's what that conversation will be focused on. Any questions? I mean, even if I don't have answers or anything, it'd be great to hear your thoughts, things you have coming up, so I could take it back if needed. Have you heard anything about CDA changes yet, or is this kind of news?
Definitely news to me, but good news. It should actually make our lives a little more productive and allow the apprentices to go through the program a little more seamlessly. And so I'm excited about this, and also happy that we structured our program competency based.
Yeah, 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 because then you have some more flexibility there in how you approach that. Anything else? Liz said it was news to her as well too. Yeah, that happened kind of fast. Had a public commentary period, and then it was just kind of a quick change. So we'll go ahead and keep you updated. And as you hear things from the field, you're hearing things from your employers or your apprentices, make sure you let us know. And I agree with Kevin. I think that there's opportunity in these changes here, and I think this information gives you direction on, how you can adjust and what you can expect to be hearing from folks. All righty. Well, thank you for that. So we're going to go ahead and wind down the PLC here, and I will move to the next slide. All right. So just we've got next steps, upcoming, and announcements. It feels like they're based on the slide. There's a lot going on here. So as you know, SOEs are due on the 15th of the month. So this most recent one was due on just a couple days ago. One note I want to show you on the chart here, and I've updated on the chart before as well. We've changed the date. We had to do some adjustments based on the extension that got worked out. And so what we did is we pushed this due date back. So this in February was listed as the 19th, but it's been pushed back to April 30th. So it's the last day of the month. That is the change highlighted there in red. So I want to highlight for you, that's when the next program report will be due. And you will be receiving access, I think it was on April 1st is when that email will be going out with that information. And so I just wanted to highlight to have you be on the lookout for that as well. We have our post PLC survey. So Sable's going to share that in the chat now. Of course, we want you to take that. We definitely use that information. We have upcoming March office hours are next week on the 24th from 1 to 2. Oh, we have a couple opportunities with for you. So this is another email that you're going to be getting. So I'm giving you a heads up on emails. You're going to be getting them, and I want to tell you why. So I've given you a heads up on the other ones. This one is an opportunity for you to share your success stories. Not only did we just hear some today, I know through the progress meetings that there are so many success stories that should be shared. And so we have an opportunity to do an article in the Inside Track newsletter. And so we want to find out who's interested in that. So there's going to be an email coming. If you're interested, respond to the email. We're going to start getting that together to do a highlight of the work we've been doing together. We've teased out the next couple PLCs a little bit more. April, May, and June PLCs are going to be open to grantees and subrecipients from all rounds of ECE scale up and pilot. So that is another email that's going out. You're going to be included in on it, but it's not something in addition to. This is just your regularly scheduled PLC. We're just including you in the invitation that's going to go out to everybody else. And in that email, we're going to be we have a survey available for hot topics and how you want the setup to be. Like, do you want to be interacting with peers? Do you want expertise presentations? These kind of things. So be on the lookout for that. And then again, I just want to keep reminding you that July PLC will be a presentation of your work to the broader audience. So you'll give a short presentation on your work, and we will have more information on what the prep looks like. That in the past, it's been about 5 minutes, so it's not terribly long. It might be a little bit longer because we have a smaller group this time, so think 5 to 7 minutes. And then, of course, I just always want to remind you about the Google Drive, and again, that there are opportunities on the horizon for apprentices, employers to take part in panels. So just start thinking about getting a feel for who might be interested in those, and stay tuned. And then lastly, I've just updated this slide here for you with the updated date, so you have all of it in front of you. Any questions before we go? No? All right, well, thank you all very much. You have a lovely day. We've got done a little bit early, so that's my gift to you, is a little extra time for a snack or a bathroom break or something before your next meeting. Thank you all so much.
Good to see you, Kevin.
Thank you.